What's up everyone, it's Ben here and welcome to Rare Liquid Careers, and I'm actually in New York right now for NFT New York, which is like a crypto conference. I actually have a separate channel which I'll leave a link to up here called Rare Liquid, and it goes over kind of stocks, personal finance and crypto related content. But anyway, today I'm going to be talking about my top 3 career kind of pieces of advice, and they're the ones that I've kind of thought about over time as I've just reflected upon my career, and we'll be moving along in different kind of settings, kind of showing you more of Central Park. And yeah, I'm just going to be going over those 3 top tips today. All right, so the first tip I have for all of you is to do your boss's job. And what I mean by this is, first of all, if you're new to the job, don't worry about this too much, but do keep this in mind for the future, because eventually you will want to be promoted, right? And so let's say you get comfortable with your job. What I mean with this piece of advice is to try to think about what your direct supervisor is doing and then take on those responsibilities to the best of your own abilities, right? And so it doesn't mean that you need to necessarily 100% just become your direct supervisors or fill in that role. But just to give you an example, when I was an analyst at JP Morgan, my associate, my direct supervisor, what she often did was check over my work to make sure everything was 100%. And so something that you could do, or I could do as an analyst, was just to make sure that all my work was accurate. Just pay a lot of attention to detail, because in banking, a lot of analysts actually just don't really make sure that everything is 100% correct all the time, because they know that their associate's going to check over everything. But as an analyst, if you do that first, then you basically are doing what the associate is doing, because in a sense you're checking over everything, making sure everything's 100% correct. And so if you can imagine, when you go towards that next kind of promotion discussion, the associate who checks over your work can be like, yeah, whenever Ben does his work, everything is already almost 100% correct, and I feel like I barely need to do anything. That way it's really easy for you to be promoted. So that's the first tip I have for you. Try to think about what your direct supervisor does and try to take on those responsibilities. The second piece of advice I have for you is more about when you should leave your current job, because I think currently these days in particular, or at least our generation, we get a lot of slack for like moving from job to job, but I think that's kind of become the norm now. And to figure out when you want to leave your job, I'd say look for 2 things, or one of 2 things. First is if you're in a toxic work culture, right? And you might think that it's obvious that if you're in a toxic work culture, then you should just leave, but I guess it kind of might be like if you're in a toxic relationship, for some reason you just keep going back to it for whatever reason. And if you're, let's say, have like a really bad boss and he or she treats you pretty miserable and makes your life miserable.
I hate so much about the things that you choose to be.
Or if you just have like a really bad work-life balance and you don't feel like you're learning or gaining anything out of it, things like that, just I would say if you're in a toxic work culture, then that's one kind of more obvious sign. I think the less obvious sign that I want to emphasize a little bit more on is if you feel way too comfortable. And this is something where maybe you like the comfort and for that reason you're staying at your current job, but if you want to keep growing and moving on to other kind of roles that really expand your responsibilities, that is not just really, for me, or when I think about it, it's not just about making more money. It's more about just expanding what you're capable of and growing as like a human being. And so I guess if that's what you want, more than just, staying comfortable and kind of doing the same thing every day, then I would highly urge you to watch out for that sign of being comfortable. So yeah, those 2 things are what I kind of wanted to share. Either a toxic environment or being too comfortable. Those are 2 really big signs for when you should move on to that next role. The third and last tip I have for you is to figure out what your values are. And I think this is something that maybe not as a common piece of career advice, but I think it's really important. I actually think it's one of the most important things you can do for your own personal sake and for your professional career. And what I mean by this is, a lot of times when life gets so busy, whether you're working on school projects all the time while managing some kind of work you're doing at like an internship, or when you're just in the workforce yourself, you're just constantly Monday through Friday thinking about school or work, and then on the weekends you decompress by doing things here and there, but there's not a lot of times when you really take that time to do a lot of introspection and think about what you really value as like a person. And for me, to give you an example, the 5 that I have as my values are humility, compassion, creativity, health, and meaning. And I can provide a little bit of how those apply to my own personal life right now with Rare Liquid and YouTube and MBA and all that I'm doing. And so I'll just focus on one of them. So meaning right now, to go into that a little bit, when I first when I was growing up, I used to kind of work hard for the sake of working hard. And so what I mean is I used to be super inspired by people like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, like all these people who just spent hours and hours working on their craft, and they do have a lot of meaning attached to what they do. But what I used to grow up with was with this mindset that working hard was just super important. And I used to maybe, like, for example, in high school, study really hard to get into a good college because that's just what I was supposed to do. And then in college, I worked hard to get a good job, and I worked in banking. But I was just kind of working hard in order to just work hard in a sense, and wasn't thinking really a lot about what I truly wanted to do. And so now when I look back, I think more about, am I finding a lot of meaning in my work? And as I'm working on Rare Liquid, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur ever since I was 10 years old. And so just thinking a lot more about meaning has actually helped me has helped me work harder in a sense, because now I'm not just thinking about just trying to put in the hours in order to try to impress anyone or anything like that, but instead I'm focusing on a business I really, really care about, and that makes me work hard. And so it's a different framework or lens through which I view the work that I'm doing now. And I think that has really helped me even with my MBA experience. You know, I think I could have definitely just only focused on Rare Liquid, and while I really do care about the business and I'm going to keep it going while I go to school, I also really wanted to check out what the MBA kind of experience was like. And it will set me back financially in some ways, but I think that the entire experience will be very, very meaningful for me, and in the long run, very worth it. And so that's why I decided in part to also go to MBA school. And so I really recommend all of you to think about what your own values are. And if you can, I also actually really recommend professional therapy. It's something that has helped me so much throughout my life and helped me kind of think about what has caused me to do some certain things when I was younger and as I've gotten older. And also with this, set of values that I've created, it was really through therapy as well, because one tip of advice that my therapist gave me was to get your values and then condense them, because I originally had a list of 10 and I condensed it down to 5, and then I attached an image to each one of them. So for example, for humility, there's this phrase that I really like, which is that real G's move in silence like lasagna. And so what that kind of means is, like, when you are successful or you're doing something right, you don't go gloat about it and tell everyone. You actually are more humble about it, and that's why I attached the picture of lasagna to humility. And it's a lot easier for me to remember humility as one of my values, because I'm sure as you do this own kind of personal reflection yourself, you're gonna find that it's hard to remember what the values you have that you wrote down. And if you attach an image to each one and maybe like post it on your wall or something, then it's just going to be a good reminder for help you to remember, what's really important to you. And then you can kind of look to see if the people you work with in your next company also hold those values as well, or you can look for companies that share those similar values as you. So that's my last piece of advice, and that pretty much wraps up the video. I hope this was helpful to all of you, and let me know if you don't have any questions about any of this down in the description, down in the comments below, and I'll happy to answer as many as I can. That said, hope to catch you in the next video. Thanks so much, and peace out.